When a cool moon of a deep night in the 1920s on Helgoland in the North Sea slants across the stone steps, sparsely clad in vegetation, leading to the cliff summit, the air is suffused with a faint scent of amber and the crisp bitterness of damp sea breezes. Within that solitary stone chamber on a desolate island where even the birds refuse to alight, a man, his face swollen from severe pollen allergies, his gaze reflecting a profound perception of the world's solitude, quietly spreads his empty hands. He is not plotting to seize secular power. Instead, within his mind, using an inner imagery honed to acute sensitivity by long observation of microscopic laws, he repeatedly contemplates the universe's philosophical metaphor of ambiguity. This sage is about to unveil the core secret of the microworld, yet what he craves most now is to return to that initial primal chaos undisturbed by any observer. He is Werner Heisenberg, a founder of quantum mechanics, an intellectual sentinel who chose to embrace uncertainty at the peak of precision, exiling himself within the mist of logic for decades. Heisenberg's beginning was imbued with a depth unique to the forests of southern Germany, woven from pine resin and the music of Bach. It was a pale gray foundation interlaced with pure German logic and agile mathematical talent, all under the doting brilliance of his father's rigorously classical tradition. As a genius born in the cradle of elites, naturally endowed with the potential to pierce through the structures of nature, he inherited a microworld that was chillingly austere, preoccupied with sacred covenants and competitive gambits. In the Munich of that time, morning bells always accompanied his footsteps as he hiked through the mountains. In those forest camps reddened by hearth fires, he learned to use his vision to see through the insurmountable boundaries behind every physical phenomenon. He was young, brilliant, and possessed an intellectual arrogance that drew stares from his peers. He rejected superficial socialization in the public square, turning instead to the embrace of volumes filled with natural laws, Greek philosophy, and the statutes of matrices, using them to measure the soul's breadth. If early self-study was the tempering of will, then his escape to Helgoland during a pollen-filled spring, deciding to discard the illusion of electron orbits on those flowerless rocks, was the practical validation that pushed Heisenberg's aesthetics of restraint to its zenith. In that endgame concerning precise position and velocity, fate dealt him the heaviest and most perilous stakes. Overturning all prevailing visual models of the time, he resolutely transformed his searing intuition into an ultimate intellectual journey, replacing endless sensory guesswork with exhaustive rational calculations. In those deep nights so quiet only the sound of waves striking the cliffs could be heard, through extremely precise accounting of matrix fluctuations and probability amplitudes, he issued those silent orders that stabilized the quantum order. At that moment, Heisenberg was the most lucid and loneliest artisan in the scientific world. Accepting all mockery from the classical schools with silence, this extreme focus made him like a marble clock tower, solitary and looming, yet unshakable. To the wise, the pinnacle of power often manifests as the penetration of truth. Heisenberg gradually realized that when he was eventually pushed toward the altar of a civilization-destroying enigma called the Axis nuclear program, what he gained was not just stability, but a nihilism that saw through the rise and fall of empires. In his Berlin stone room, filled with the fragrance of amber and stacked with comparative manuscripts of ancient Greek astronomy, he silently observed the details of scholars who had once promoted or betrayed him. He discovered that those imperial ideals, once so grand as to be arrogant, appeared fragile before the cold mirror of his own formulas, a fragility more potent than any divine oracle. This transition from prodigy back to gambler was fraught with intellectual struggle, yet it imbued him with a nearly transparent, cool serenity. In his diary he noted, "I once thought I was building a home, now I find I am merely searching, amidst the desolate gaps of memory, for an intersection that allows the soul to cease its fall." Heisenberg's final phase was spent in an exceptionally solemn silence imbued with a sage's luster. By now, the physicist's body had become extremely light from eons of vigilant watching. His once heavy formal suits now hung loosely upon his frail skeletal frame, or rather upon a will that had almost become a shadow. He understood that the age of reason belonging to the classical order was approaching its end along with his increasingly slow breathing, and he, this witness of order, would subsequently be buried within the dust of legends. In his final conscious moments, rejecting the suggestion to return to the capital for a final medal, he requested the spirit wind carry him to that terrace overlooking distant mountains, to one last time hear an inner tide belonging to him alone, without an audience. Closing his eyes, with those hands that had held myriad pen tips and caressed 10,000 star charts, he traced an arc of completeness across his chest for the last time. At that moment, no city bells chimed, the late wind carried away the great hermit's final sigh. Even half a century after his physical passing, Heisenberg's name remains the sole sanctuary for many insomniac seekers in the deep night. When people gaze upon his iconic, breathtakingly rigorous marble profile in modern galleries, it is as if they can still feel an old man whispering by the dying lamp of reason in that damp, ancient night of the past. What he left behind was not a towering pillar of triumph, but a spiritual template for self-restraint and noble departure. He teaches us that even if the entire world besieges you with turmoil, even if your era is destined to collapse, the order of your inner heart is still governed by your perception of truth. He was one of the few in history who truly transcended appearance and prejudice, maintaining absolute lucidity within absolute shadows and holding absolute logic amidst absolute temptation. Heisenberg's story thus slowly gathered inward amidst the gradually weakening tidal sounds of probability. We are accustomed to idolizing heroes who stand on high platforms waving like gods, yet we often overlook the artisans in the corners mending their ideals alone. He was never an opportunist performing for fame, he was an utterly exhausted soul who consistently refused to compromise with mediocrity. But please believe that within every life, there is a personal Helgoland. A marginal space requiring no explanation to the world, only dialogue with oneself. May Heisenberg's tranquility and vastness become the softest feather in your dreams, carrying you toward that quietest and most boundless shore of the heart. Good night, and may good dreams always be with you.